Did you know the first people to get married on video were actually Titanic passengers? Let's talk about teenage Titanic honeymooners Daniel and Mary Marvin. Mary's parents moved from Edinburgh, Scotland to New York City, where they opened a really successful dressmaking business that was extremely popular among the debutantes. Every girl wanted to get married in one of their dresses. And Mary, who was listed in the New York Social Register as a debutante herself, often wore her mother's designs to events that she attended. And Daniel's father was a motion picture pioneer. He was one of Thomas Edison's biggest competitors, and they fought a lot over patents for different designs. So it makes sense that he wanted to have his son's wedding captured on film. When Daniel and Mary were both 17, they met, they fell in love, they wanted to get married. But both of their families thought they were too young and wanted them to wait a year or two. But on January 8th, 1912, they snuck off to New York City Hall and got married in a secret civil ceremony. They kept their secret for almost 2 months. But Mary was pregnant, and in the first week of March, her morning sickness was impossible to hide anymore. Her parents realized that circumstances had changed, and if the marriage wasn't publicly recognized by the time Mary had her baby, then it would be a social disaster. So they really quickly arranged this small, formal religious ceremony for the couple. And right after the actual ceremony, they had to reenact it for the camera. So all in all, they had 3 weddings. March 13th, they get on board Mauretania to sail to Britain for a 5-week honeymoon. Then on April 10th, they boarded Titanic in Southampton to head back home. They were first-class passengers, and Daniel's father had actually gifted them a camera for their honeymoon. So he was filming when Titanic pulled out of port and almost collided with another ship immediately. And we know by now there was a lot to do on Titanic, but Daniel and Mary were so in love that they mostly kept to themselves. And in a lot of survivor accounts, they say that they saw Daniel and Mary embracing each other constantly. The night of April 14th, they went to the dining room to share a meal with their fellow first-class passengers, and then they returned to their cabin. A steward knocked on their door around 45 minutes after the collision and told them basically, "Hey, we're getting people onto lifeboats. Please dress warmly and come up to deck." They got dressed, and Daniel unloaded the reel of film from his camera. They still thought it was just a precaution until the officers started calling for women and children, and Daniel urged Mary to get in a lifeboat. And though she was sobbing, she got into lifeboat 10. And at this point, the ship was already tilting, so there was about a 2.5-foot gap in between the ship and the lifeboat, so she kind of had to jump across, and she twisted her ankle pretty badly in the process. She got in the lifeboat, and Daniel tossed her the film reel. While her lifeboat was being lowered, she looked up, and amidst all the chaos, Daniel blew her a kiss. She strained her eyes throughout the night trying to find Daniel, and when the ship finally went down around 2 a.m., she covered her face and started sobbing. After Carpathia rescued the Titanic survivors, Mary wandered around the deck. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't drink, she just wanted to find Daniel. But he wasn't on any of the survivor lists. She was overcome by her grief. Her mother and Daniel's mother were waiting on her when Carpathia docked in New York. They went to the White Star Line where they consulted the full list of survivors, and when she was told there was no chance Daniel was still alive, she fainted and had to be revived with smelling salts. Mary wanted Daniel to have a proper burial, so she hoped that his body would be recovered, but it never was, and no one knows what happened to him in his final moments. Mary spent the rest of her pregnancy in mourning, and she couldn't even watch their wedding footage. And on October 21st, she gave birth to Mary Margaret Elizabeth Marvin, and was once again struck by grief. But the next year, on Christmas Day 1913, she married a family friend, Horace S. DeCamp. It was a bit of a scandal because he was being sued for breach of promise by actress Florence E. Clark, because apparently they had been engaged that year as well. Nevertheless, Mary and Horace did get married, and they had 2 children together. She lived a long life before passing away in 1975 at the age of 81.